there is not really therefore a problem of budgetary funds or quantum. The problem is egos, ministerial egos, central government versus state government, turf wars. I think that if people like the Prime Minister and the Chief Justice put their head together, along with a few nudges and pushes, will not be a problem.
Very quickly, sorry, Sarabji, you've been Attorney General and Solicitor General. Do you believe that there is a large number of retired judges willing to be reappointed in sufficient numbers to make a difference? And secondly, will those reappointed retired judges be willing to work Saturdays and Sundays? Will they be willing to work early morning and late evenings? Because it's one thing to suggest this is a solution, but it may be quite a different thing to find retired people willing to fulfill those functions, because it puts an onerous burden on them at an age when perhaps they want to slow down.
Current first point, I'm sure large number of retired judges will be willing to act and sit to the Supreme Court. Whether it's from in the early morning or late evening, that's another matter. As a matter of convenience, that can be sorted out. But the thing is, those judges must also be approached in a proper manner. I'm sure they will not decline. I'm sure many of them will do that as their duty to address a serious problem of arrears. And I think that should be tried. I don't know of any retired judge or ad hoc judge who has point blank refused.
Okay.
Holiday courts and other courts are a different matter. Basically, their services will be available and can be utilized to reduce the areas of cases to some extent possible.
Kalikesh Singh Deo, the Prime Minister...
they won't refuse.
Kalikesh Singh Deo, the Prime Minister suggested, if propriety and constitutional convention permits, a closed-door meeting between top ministers and top judges to sort out the problem. Given that this is a problem that involves a tradition of 30 years of not being handled, given that it's a problem that involves clashes of egos, is this the right approach? A closed-door meeting between people who hopefully will be on the same side wanting to sort out the problem?
Well, Karan, we've just had a situation where the government and the judiciary have fought bitterly over the NJAC. And, in this kind of an environment, I suspect that finding a solution will not be easy. Even the solution that's suggested by the Chief Justice and which was spoken by your panel members as recently is, to appoint retired judges. I think, there is a problem in appointing people to not only the judiciary, any other component of the executive or legislative also, where they don't have a stake in the system. I think a better approach would be to just raise the retirement age. So there's a process of promotion, the process of accountability which remains. I think a lot more debate needs to happen about this than just off-the-cuff remarks between the top judiciary and the government. And you really should bring professionals and experts as the ones who are on your panel to help with that.
The thing is, increasing the retirement age will reduce the number of vacancies possibly because they'll occur at a later stage, but it won't increase the number of judges. And what's urgently needed is not just to reduce vacancies but increase judges. That is what bringing back retired judges will do. Very quickly, do you think it's still not such a great idea?
Karan, there is a need to reduce the number of vacancies as well as increase the number of judges. I am just saying those who are in the system need to be accountable to the system and have hope of promotions.
Okay.
And that's why I don't want them to be coming in as retired judges, but rather than be a part of the system to begin with. So they're just held more accountable and have a hope of getting a higher promotion if they're in the High Court or Supreme Court maybe.
Shaina NC, you referred in complimentary terms to the Prime Minister practicing something that he had done in Gujarat, which is to tell judges not to take vacations. He raised that idea yesterday himself, but unfortunately, he got a fairly tough response from the Chief Justice. The Chief Justice didn't approve of the idea. He said, and I'm quoting him, "What do you think we do during our holidays? Do you think we go to Manali? Do you think we go for trekking?" And the Chief Justice went on to point out that judges often use their vacations to write judgments. He quoted the example of Justice Kehar as an example of a man who not only had to use his vacation, but had to take leave on top of that to write his judgments. And the question I want to put to you is this: was the Prime Minister wise to raise that issue of judges not taking holidays or reducing their holidays? It seemed to touch a sore point just when that was the wrong thing to do.
Currently, you forgot to mention one line that he mentioned while saying this. He said, when one side is ready, the other side is not. Ask the bar if they are ready. So I think this is also not a commentary on our Prime Minister, but a commentary on the system, that you have lawyers who sometimes say that they will not want to have these holiday courts, etc. But having said that, I think what your panelists have said is the mature way ahead, which is that yes, we do need to have more judges. We need to have the expertise that comes along with it. Retired judges, I'm sure that if we do take them absolutely into confidence and explain the kind of backlog we have, which our Honorable Prime Minister will do in the days to come, we will be having some kind of a solution forward. And having said that, I think you also need to give it to our Prime Minister that he had the courage of conviction to agree that there are systemic failures, and we can collectively work towards coming up with a via media, which means the judiciary and the government, without one blaming the other or not taking the onus of the other.
But you know, you very correctly made a point there that I want to put quickly to Dushyant before I take a break. The Chief Justice did say, Dushyant, that when he asked whether the Supreme Court Bar Association, and you are the president of it at the moment, would be willing to work during vacations, he didn't get a response. His exact words were that he asked the Bar Association to give him the names of lawyers who would work during their vacations, and no such list, he said, had been given to him.
Ask the bar if they are ready.
Well, I think I may disagree with the Honorable Chief Justice there. He did make a request to me in the open court last week. I immediately have issued an appeal to all members of the bar through emails and WhatsApp messages, and I have told them to revert back to me with specific cases that any member or every member would want to be heard during the vacation. And I did inform the Honorable Chief Justice, in fact, on Friday itself in the function reception for Chief Justices of India, where I told him that I have done such exercise and that I am awaiting the response of the members. So I think I perhaps would not be in position to agree with that statement of the Honorable Chief Justice. But yes, it does take time but let me say one more thing, that I don't think the solution of engaging the retired judges is any solution at all. It is not even a trickle. So I don't think we should really go about it. Increasing the age, perhaps it may or it may not be, because what we really need today in the judicial system is from within the system tremendous efficiency and tremendous case management, which I think judiciary needs to learn lessons from management experts. Judiciary is not willing to do that. Biggest problem is judiciary is not willing to engage with the bar. Unless and until judiciary engages with the bar on a very, very systematic basis. I have been appealing to the judges, Chief Justices repeatedly. I don't think they are really interested in giving up their power. They think that they have some kind of a divine power which should not be shared with anybody. So unless and we have tremendous scope to improve the system from within the system. And we can do it if we sit together. Everybody knows that. But unfortunately, that's not happening. So I think, and I don't think that we have to wait for the government to really help us out. We can do it.
I'm going to take a break at that point. When I come back, I'm going to discuss a radical solution that some people are hoping might help. Not that it will be the perfect solution, and that is the creation of 4 national courts of appeal in all the 4 corners of the country, reducing the Supreme Court to just a constitution court. Would that be a solution? Would it be a part solution? Or is it irrelevant to the problem we face? Incidentally, one of the hearings on that matter happened to be today. That's the subject we're going to take up after the break. See you in a moment's time. Welcome back. You're watching To The Point, and we're discussing a speech made by the Chief Justice of India yesterday, where he raised the question, how does the backlog of cases in courts get handled by the government? Sorry, Srabji, I want to take up an idea that is being considered by the Supreme Court and coincidentally one of the hearings on this issue happened to be today. Would creating 4 national courts of appeal in the 4 corners of the country and limiting the Supreme Court to only constitutional issues be a way of effectively tackling the backlog of over 60,000 cases that are stuck in the Supreme Court? Or would it only make a difference at the level of those Supreme Court cases and not matter to high courts and anything below?
Yeah, correct, Karan. I'm not in favor of the proposal, creating more courts. The real reason is the present Supreme Court was realized. And I'm not against judicial activism, but it shouldn't degenerate to judicial inventionism. Every issue of public interest does not raise a matter of constitutional importance, which requires adjudication by the Supreme Court. That realization must be there. And I think it would be good if the judges really, if I may say so, control their tendency to interfere in matters which are beyond the judicial ken. And that's why it results in all these problems. People rush to Supreme Court in other matters. So I don't think we need other 4 courts. That will have its own problems. Let the judges of the Supreme Court realize what is the jurisdiction in adjudicating the under Article 32, 136, matters of constitutional importance, matters which affect the life of the nation, issues which need to resolve conflicts from judges, not every popular interest or popular matter of public interest.
Abhishek Singhvi, what you've heard from Soli Sorabji, a former Attorney General, is that the backlog of some 60,000 plus cases in the Supreme Court needs to be tackled by the judges themselves, showing restraint, not admitting cases that should not be heard by the Supreme Court, being more careful about what is added to that list. Do you think that is the answer? Do you think this idea of creating 4 national courts of appeal would not be an effective way of bringing appeals closer to people geographically and also ensuring that they're handled possibly 4 times as fast?
No, I would not want a set of national courts of appeal for a variety of reasons. First of all, I think it's a sledgehammer approach to try and deal with a fly. 60,000 arrears leads to a churning process of the whole country for years. You need to amend the Constitution of India. Given the democracy tax and the price we pay for democracy, parliamentary delays, disputes, 2/3 majority, it is going to take eternity before you even amend the Constitution, and there will be endless debates, and all the time you're trying to reduce 60,000 matters. We are talking of 2.5 crore arrears. That energy is much better spent by strengthening the lowest ladder and the high court ladders, not creating a new set of appeal courts. Thirdly, Karan, I think the whole concept of Supreme Court as an integrated court, as a single court, you are only really adding another layer in between, and if you do not exercise restraint in respect to matters where you should not interfere, you will do the same thing even with that layer. Okay. So I don't think this is something on which it could have been possible at the founding stage, but today you'll be disrupting too many things to create a new regime.
Very quickly, Dushyant Dave, and I'm going to ask you to give me an answer literally with yes or no, because I then want to go on to something else with you again. Are you in favor of this proposal that the Supreme Court is considering of creating 4 national courts of appeal, or does your heart lie with Soli Sorabji and Abhishek Singhvi, who are very firmly against it? Yes or no, and I'll go to other things with you.
I am absolutely against it.
All right. Then I won't ask you why, because we've got 3 people against it, and I imagine your reasons are very similar to theirs. I'm going to put something else to you. It seems that as far as the judges themselves are concerned, the cure to the problem is increasing the number of judges, not by bringing in retired people to act as ad hoc judges, not by working over Saturdays and Sundays and early in the morning or late at night, but by simply, and very importantly, increasing the quantum of judges provided for by the system. Do you see that happening easily? Because it hasn't happened for 30 years, and as you say, and you pointed this out very wisely, the Law Commission didn't recommend 50, its original recommendation was 107 per 1 million. And we're nowhere near that. So do you see that happening? And if it's not going to happen easily, are we going to be stuck with this problem forever?
Well, let me answer that by reading the Law Commission's interim report, last paragraph, which was made on 31st of July 1987. And I quote, it is very much hoped by the Commission that this first interim report will invoke sufficient parliamentary, public and specialist discussion in order to assist a viable and comprehensive manpower planning for the Indian judiciary. Nothing of this kind has happened. Neither the political class parliamentary debates have taken place, public including the media have never bothered about it, specialists including lawyers have never discussed about it. So this has been a dead letter for over 36 years now. So I don't think the increase in number of judges is going to happen in foreseeable future. You have to tighten the system. You have to make the judges much more efficient. You have to ensure that the judiciary functions in a much more efficient manner, for which the responsibility entirely lies with the Chief Justice of every High Court and the Chief Justice of India. And of course, the bar has to support them substantially. Let me also say one more thing. Why I don't agree with Mr. Sorabji and all about the interim court before the Supreme Court is that today, because of the bad delivery of judgments by the high courts and the subordinate courts, the Supreme Court is required to interfere time and again. It's not supposed to do so, but it does, because it finds that the judges are giving terribly wrong judgments. Why are they giving wrong judgments? Because we have ended up appointing really terrible judges for a long period of time. Nobody has questioned that. And lastly, I must say one more thing, that I disagree with Ms. Saina, that in Gujarat the fast-track courts had to be shut down. Gujarat has had no good record on judicial reforms or better working of the judicial system. I come from Gujarat. I have been following Gujarat very closely. I go there at least 4 times a month.
You have to make it short.
I know what's happening there. Gujarat is no example.
Very quickly, Kalikesh Singhvi. I am not letting this become a tu-tu meme between the two of you. I have other issues that I want to take up. Accept his judgment on Gujarat. If you don't like it, I'll register your disapproval, but I'm not going into that issue. Kalikesh Singhvi, one of the things that you heard from Dushyant Dave is that the onus is on politicians as a whole to act. At the end of the day, whether it's appointment of more judges, whether it's changing the ratio of judges or whatever, the onus is on politicians. And if Parliament doesn't awaken to the crisis, and if MPs don't feel a need to give this priority, it will never happen. Do you think there will be, after the Chief Justice broke down yesterday, greater importance given by MPs across parties to this issue?
I think so, Karan. Even if it's not been discussed in Parliament as yet, it's already being discussed in Central Hall, and that's a prelude to what's going to come up in Parliament. But look at it from a government's perspective. If I have to, let's say in Odisha, if I have to take money away from a drought-ridden Odisha where people are dying and put it into judiciary, then I have to know, as Mr. Dave said, that the judiciary works efficiently and is going to lend to a lot of justice being given out and not necessarily further, further impediments being created in the judicial system or justice delivery system. So I think it's, while Parliament needs to give more funds or gives more attention to this issue, the judicial system also has to be reformed and the system has to become more efficient.
Shaila, let me put it like this. Much depends upon how much importance and priority the Prime Minister gives this issue. And I think the Chief Justice tried to make a personal appeal when he said it wasn't just litigants who would suffer, but Make in India and FDI would suffer, because the investors have as much of an interest in speedy and good justice as anyone else. Is this going to rise to somewhere near the top of the Prime Minister's list of priorities?
I'm sure this issue will raise absolute chord with the Honourable Prime Minister, because he has said immediately after, where he wasn't meant to comment, despite that he said, yes, he concedes that the government and the judiciary need to talk and need to coordinate and need to come up with a conclusive solution. I don't think this is about a Make in India or just an issue of having foreign investors who need better judiciary. It is about the common Indian man. And when we talk about it, yes, the backlog, when you talk about having more judges, but as I said, at the cost of repetition. If it is not qualitative, it cannot just be quantity, especially in the field of judiciary. And I think when the Chief Justice also made this comment today, he made this comment with sincerity where he said it's not just about us, it's about the bar as well, when we want to come up with solutions and when we want to come up with less backlog. So I think as a whole, it has to be viewed in totality. Government with judiciary being one aspect, judiciary with the bar being another, and all in all, whether it is working that little extra, which needs to be at least a preliminary step towards reducing the backlog.
Abhishek Singhvi, in our country, everything gets polarized between government and opposition. We are great at going to extremes simply to oppose an idea. But on this issue, can Congress make it non-partisan? Would you support the government in the bigger, wider interest of justice and the ordinary Indian litigant?
I don't think there is a single instance where on matters or bills or resolutions relating to such a subject, the Congress has in any manner been obstructive, negative or otherwise not cooperative. But I think ultimately it's really begging the question, because really this whole process has to start with the initiative, the policy perspective, the plan, the mechanism, everything. The initiative has to come from the government.
Absolutely,
not only
that
the
I
initiative,
accept.
but the piloting, the pushing. And I can assure you that if that happens, and unfortunately we don't see it anywhere else at the moment, but yes, if it happens, yes, there will be full cooperation.
Very quickly, Soli Sarabji, because we're running out of time, you have perhaps the most experience both of government and the judiciary as a former Solicitor General and Attorney General out of all my panelists. Are you hopeful that we will see meaningful and significant change, or do you think we're going to get a lot of talk, but when the front pages no longer reflect the story, it will be forgotten? A quick answer, sir, because we're out of time.
No, Karan, I'm hopeful. I'm sure all the stakeholders, the bar, the government, the judges, will make a concerted effort to tackle this problem of arrears, because if it's not tackled, it poses a serious danger to our democracy and rule of law.
All right, Dushant,
I'm optimistic.
I saw your finger go up, but then it went down and you sipped something instead.
Just
that perhaps a hint to all of us, it's time for a drink.
Yeah, I disagree with Dr.